Hi, everybody. Welcome to Girls Who Code Talks. My name is Emily Moss. I'm the Director of Alumni Programs at Girls Who Code, and we are so excited that you're joining us this evening. I'm here today with a really amazing panel of folks. We're going to start to bring them on the screen, and I'm looking forward to introducing you to these amazing cloud experts while we talk about Cloud Computing 101. Oh man. In this chat, we have New Jersey, Bay Area, Worcester, Massachusetts, Virginia, Phoenix. This is amazing. We're so glad that you are here. Thank you for joining, and thanks for those of you that brought friends as well. All right, let's start to bring our panelists in here, and you're going to meet some amazing folks. One of our panelists is Deanna Rowe. Deanna leads technical programs at a top financial security firm. She was previously a sales engineer at Google, managing one of the largest financial services clients. And she has a degree in computer science and business management information systems. Deanna is also a stellar chef, and her specialties include homemade ice cream and bread. We're going to meet Deanna in just a moment. Our second panelist today is Dr. Issy Idemudia. Dr. Issy is an AWS Solutions Architect, Associate Manager at Accenture with over a decade of experience. And she is also the best-selling author of Out of Africa and Into the Cloud, inspiring girls to overcome their fears and get into tech. Issy is also a mother of two beautiful daughters, Ivana and Shalomi. And our last and final panelist for the day is Jessica Pruitt, a cloud architect for the audit and assurance practice at Deloitte. Jessica is an expert in the Microsoft technologies and has worked with the Big Four, DoD, and run her own business. She has a bachelor's in business and a master's degree in information tech, and she volunteers with Feeding Tampa, where she lives, and enjoys gardening and being outdoors. We're going to bring our panelists on to join us now. Folks that are just joining, let us know where you are, where you're listening in from. We love to see this geographic diversity. I see West Palm Beach, I see Augusta, and there they are. Hi, panelists. Let's make sure our mics are on. Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Let's start with you, Deanna. I would love for you to introduce yourself and tell folks a little bit about you and your work. And specifically, like, what do you do all day? What does it mean to work in this field? And I'd also like you to answer our icebreaker, which is, what is the best advice you've received from a mentor or manager? Take it away.
All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you guys so much for having me. I didn't realize that we would have people from literally all over the place. So I'm actually in West Palm Beach right now as well, for whoever had commented that. So nice to see that there are other people from here dialing in. I'm currently at a financial services company called Citadel Securities. For them, I help roll out and manage technical programs across various elements of our business. So every day looks a little bit different depending on what types of projects are coming up as the most important for us to be working on this week. It's often kind of hard to tell what's going on next week or what I did last week. But recently, I work quite a bit with our research group that uses cloud technology in order to scale out the different types of modeling that they do, which ties in well with what I did before I worked here. So before that, I was at Google, which Emily had mentioned, working in their cloud business as well. I think for my icebreaker, when I was at Google, my manager at one point had told me, and it really stuck with me in my head, was that every company will take as much as they can from you. And it was an interesting comment to hear from a manager who would be in that position to benefit from me providing, as much as I possibly could in that position. But I think it's a good thing to keep in mind, because it's really up to you to set your own boundaries. And if you don't, and if you continue working until 1 a.m. or whatnot, the company will be more than happy to allow you to do that. So it's just kind of a good piece of advice that I try to remind myself of occasionally.
I love that. Boundary setting, starting us off strong, Deanna. Thank you for introducing yourself, and thank you for being here. Let's move on to Issy. Would you mind introducing yourself and sharing some of your best advice you've received from a manager or mentor?
Okay, hello everyone. I'm so excited to be here, excited to meet all of you. I'm Dr. Issy, currently working at Accenture as an AWS Cloud Solutions Architect. And my day-to-day is kind of similar for a few months. So like 2-3 months, I'm in one project, it's kind of the same thing. And then another 3 months is different. But what I'm doing currently, I'm building a vaccine management platform. So all of you who will be taking the vaccine in a few months, of those who've taken, we're building that platform on an AWS cloud infrastructure. So I'm really excited. I'm able to do such great work that impacts all of us. And one great advice that I've received, once I made a mistake, I was doing something and there was an error, and then I kept going over it, playing over it over in my mind and over. And my manager called me and said, you need to stop. It's happened, it's in the past, just move on. So yes, that's my advice.
That is such good advice for life and for work. And our final panelist, Jessica, would you introduce yourself and share some advice?
Hi, I'm Jessica Pruitt. I work as an Azure cloud architect. I primarily focus on infrastructure architecture. So working for Deloitte, I support internal teams that develop applications. There's application architects that work with that, designing the front end of the application. I worry about the non-functional requirements, high availability, disaster recovery, performance, trying to make sure that the application is ready to do what the application architects need it to do. My day is very busy. I also have a hard time figuring out what I did yesterday, and what I do every day is putting out a lot of fires. I'm good with notes. I take a lot of screenshots. It's very important to be organized because there's a lot of information flying back and forth, people, information everywhere. So that's a secret weapon, is getting really organized with the information that you have to manage when you're in technology, just for yourself. One of the best, some of the best advice that I've been given is to be a sponge. To be successful in life, and especially in technology, you need to be a lifelong learner. So having constant interest in new things and figuring out what your next thing is to learn is really important. And sometimes you just don't have all the answers. So being a sponge allows you to absorb a lot of the unknown in a new topic, and then eventually answers start to come together. So being a sponge is like a really important thing sometimes as you're adventuring through technology.
I love that, because I think when you're new to the industry, you think that you learn one technology, become an expert, and you never have to learn anything new again. And unfortunately, technology moves in all directions all the time, and you're always learning new things, even experts, as we have here today.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Brittany. We like this advice as well. For mine, I mentioned I'm Emily. I work at Girls Who Code. I'm the director of alumni programs. The best advice I've received that I used in every job is to write a thank you note. Write a thank you note when somebody gives you good advice. Write a thank you note when someone helps you on a project. Write a thank you note when you attend an event with a bunch of experts and they give you something to think about. So this is my advice to all of you. I'm sure these three amazing women are on LinkedIn, and if you go find them later and send them a thank you note tomorrow, they will remember you. So that's my advice. I'd like to talk about Cloud Computing 101, which is what we named this session, because I think it means lots of things to lots of people. I think it's trendy, and you see it in articles and job descriptions and LinkedIn posts. So what I'm going to ask is that each of you, sort of in a short layman's terms way, if you were talking to someone who's never heard of cloud computing before, what does this mean? And EC, could we start with you here?
Yeah, good question. So I would say cloud computing is, here is my database, here is my application, here's my stuff, hold it for me.
Okay.
Just hold it for me, and manage, just manage it for me, and while I just focus on my core business. That's what cloud computing is. So we have different cloud providers, like we've heard from the panelists. We have Microsoft, we have Google, we have Amazon, and a few other cloud providers. Those are the people who are holding your stuff.
I love that. And for the attendees, you missed before the event, we were setting up with the panelists, and there was almost a fight here over what is the best cloud provider, because all three, and this is really cool for you all to know, all three of these folks work for different providers. There's not a single one. They may argue what you think is the best, but there's lots of ways to go here. Deanna, can you add anything to that? Sort of what is cloud computing in simple terms?
Yeah, I'm going to take a little bit of a different approach. So Emily had mentioned that I like baking. Cloud computing to me is like, there are different levels. So you can imagine ordering a pizza. You just call up, Domino's or wherever you're going to get a pizza from, and the pizza shows up. That's like what we would call probably platform as a service, where it's super easy and very plug and play. You can say like, I want pepperoni, or actually I want mushrooms, and everything's great. Or you can continue to kind of dive a little bit deeper and control more of your pizza, so to say. So you could go to Trader Joe's and pick up their pizza dough. I've heard it's pretty good. And then you can buy some tomato sauce and put some shredded cheese on top. Or you can go all the way down to the bottom and mill your own grains, and then make your own flour and make your own dough, and then have this whole, 25-hour pizza making experience, which is getting much, much closer to a traditional infrastructure setup and a little bit more away from the idea of leveraging someone else's expertise to make your pizza or hold your stuff, or however you want to phrase it there.
Awesome. I like it. And now I'm hungry. We did this before dinner, so thank you for that. Jessica, do you have another analogy or another way of thinking about it or describing it?
Sure. Well, I mean, at the end of the day, it's using somebody else's hardware and software. So the pizza is a great analogy, and as Izzy says, other people's stuff. The benefit is when in the traditional on-premise sense, before the cloud was around, companies had to invest a lot of money in those servers and infrastructure and have people to manage it. And so before you even get into coding and development, you're spending all this time just trying to buy things and set things up. And so, and then you have a lot of expense around that. So the cloud kind of flipped the coin for being able to innovate quicker, because other people have done all that legwork, and you can plug in, like Deanna said, you can get to that fully prepared pizza if you want, or you may want to customize it and just order the dough and figure out what goes on top. Or you may want to start from scratch and say, just give me all the ingredients, So it's a really wonderful way for people to get right into the business of developing, instead of having to be in the business of buying. Still spending money, but it's a quicker way to get there.
I love this. That's sort of three different ways of thinking about this. And I hope that one of those at least clicked with all of you listening in. Certainly helped me understand, as this is something that's kind of new to me as well. So there's a lot of different ways to go into computer science, to go into software, to go into tech. Somehow all three of you have ended up in this expertise area. That's why we asked you to join us on this panel. I would love to understand a little bit about that journey. Like, what did you start studying? What did you do at the beginning of your career? And really, what drew you into this field as a place to specialize over time? Deanna, I'm going to kick it back to you to start this one off. Oh, you're muted, Deanna.
Oh man, I know how to work Zoom. I'm not going to turn into a cat for everyone who saw the wonderful meme earlier. Yeah, when I went to college, the main goal was to graduate and get a job. And then looking at kind of the job market at the time and where things were trending, computer science looked like a very, realistic degree to study and to get a job after school. My mom also is a computer scientist. And so I thought, if anything, I could take a class, and if I didn't like it, we would have something to talk about, and maybe I would understand her job a little bit better. But we're very similar. And so it was not very surprising to me that I actually ended up loving it. So after I graduated, I worked at IBM for a little bit, and just kind of through the way that big companies work, found myself eventually on a cloud team. And so it wasn't so much by my own seeking out that it happened, but as soon as I landed there, I really started to thrive and found it to be a fun and exciting environment. I think partially, Jessica, you had mentioned this before, of like, you end up being able to see so much more innovation happening in the cloud because so much of what takes a very long time is provided, that it was a really fast-paced and fun environment to work in within a company. So once I found that, then I just kind of stuck in that stream for quite a while.
I love that. And I think it's a realistic way that sometimes you fall into a career path, or big companies shuffle you around, or you start in a rotational program or an apprenticeship. And all of a sudden you have so much experience in one area that fingers crossed you like it, because now you're an expert.
Exactly.
Jessica, tell us a little bit about your path here.
Sure. Mine wasn't a traditional one. So I went to the School of Hard Knocks before I actually finished my college degree. I grew up pretty poor. My mom was a waitress, and while I was in high school, she was going to college and she was working on her engineering degree, and it was environmental engineering. So she was taking classes in concrete. And I'm looking at that going, yeah, I'm not going to be an engineer. I'm not interested in concrete. But you know, she got me a job as a secretary in an environmental firm right out of college, and I was good at organizing things. So I had a couple of jobs as an office person, and then I lived briefly out in Colorado. I came back to Tampa, and I ended up as a temporary employee for a major bank. And this is an interesting story. I was working on spreadsheets, and there was a major problem with their write-off process, their end of year stuff. And they had hired a female executive to come in, had a lot of programming experience, a master's degree in finance. And because of politics and stuff, the people that were there didn't want her advice. So she was bored, and I sat next to her. So I got full-time mentorship from this fabulously brilliant female who taught me all about databases, talked to me about finance, helped me figure out these spreadsheets. So I basically, through her, I was remote hands for her brain. We developed a database, and my boss got promoted. I trained people in New York. Everything was cool, but they wouldn't hire me because I didn't have a degree. I went from $7 an hour to $10 an hour. Awesome. They asked what they could do for me, and I said, can you send me to a database class, a real class, because I'd like an education. So I went to a computer training school, and while I was there, I thought, if I teach this stuff, I could probably learn it. So I said, how do you become a teacher? Because they were my age. And I went on to teach like 40 computer classes, worked for them for 5 years, had some kids, started my own business, and, over the years worked for the DoD, lived in Germany for a little while, and then ended up back here in Tampa and worked for the Big Four. And I've learned to kind of chase the money over the years. Like, I have to spend a lot of time learning. And so I make my career moves and I figure out what I'm going to do next by trying to kind of research where technology is going and what I'm interested in. And I have kind of evolved that. And then I also wasn't getting the jobs I wanted to without the degree, the piece of paper. So I did school remotely, and I finished my master's. After the fact, I ended up teaching some of the courses, which was kind of fun. I had to pay for it, but I taught them. And so, yeah, here I am. It's a weird path that I got here, and it's pretty amazing that I'm getting to do what I am today. I really love my job, and I love working with Deloitte. They have you bring your genuine self, and they really want you to be your best, and there's a lot of opportunity. So I feel really blessed.
I love that story, Jessica. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think it's a good illustration too, that just because you start doing one thing doesn't mean that that's what you do forever. Careers are long, and there's a lot of opportunity out there. Let's hear a little bit from EC, and Alyssa, my colleague, is going to drop a link in the chat here. If you are wanting to hear more from EC, she has written a book about her story. So we wanted to link to her book as well, but let's hear directly from you.
Yeah, I mean, Jessica, that was so inspiring. Thank you for sharing that. Wow, awesome. Okay, so my story is a little similar to Jessica's because I've always been deliberate about chasing the money. And I started off, I went to college, I studied computer engineering. I studied computer engineering in Nigeria, where girls weren't even allowed to go to school, to go to college. You just finish your high school and then you're married off. But I decided to be different. I went to college. There was just one computer for 150 of us to share. Like, we would form we will stay in the line until it gets to your turn. When it gets to your turn, you just have 5 minutes to write your code, execute your code, and get out of there. So that was how I learned how to code. Well, in the midst of all of those challenges, I knew I wanted to be where I am today. So I kept the focus. By the time I graduated from college, I was already an Oracle certified professional. And that's because I was taking external classes out of school. I found this place where there were some Indians who were doing computer classes and trainings. So I was going there after school in the evenings. I was taking Oracle classes. And then at the end, by 5 years, when I finished my bachelor's, I already had 4 Oracle certifications. So I got out of college and then immediately I was working as an Oracle DBA. And I did that for a while, working on databases and things like that. And then I now started hearing a lot about, okay, I moved to the US. When I moved to the US, by the time I moved to the US, I already had a PhD in technology. So I did my master's in information technology. I did a PhD in technology management, all of that just chasing the money. And then when I came here, and then I heard everyone's talking about cloud, cloud, cloud. I'm like, what the heck is this cloud? I did some research. I found out, I saw the trajectory. I saw that that's where the money is. I sat down, I prepared for certifications. I focused on AWS, got AWS certified. I taught myself AWS in my room, read it, passed, got certified, and I started working at Accenture. So that's my story.
I love it. First, I just love the candor around chasing the money. It's not a bad thing to talk about money. It's not a bad thing to talk about advocating for yourself, looking for the next opportunity. This is so important, and it's so great to hear you all talk about that. I want to do a brief digression. First thing, Alyssa, we're going to do a quick poll. So this is for you attendees. I would love to know a little bit about how much you know about cloud. So we're going to have a poll pop up on your screen. Panelists, if you see it, you can answer it and then it'll go away. But this is really helpful to us as we think about our programs. Yeah, I know they are awesome. Folks in the comments are talking about how awesome you are, and it's true. You all are so awesome. So I'm going to digress from our scripted questions for a second, because there's something I've heard a bunch of you say, which is around certifications. And I would love to understand, there's degrees like a bachelor's degree, a master's degree, a PhD. Could maybe, EC, if you could just share a little bit about what is a certification and how does that fit into this world of cloud computing?
Absolutely. So in the tech world, we love certifications. Certification is just that validation that you have the skill sets that you say you have, and you cannot have too many certifications. I probably have somewhere around 12 or 13 certifications because I don't joke. I don't joke at all. So the industry recognizes you. If they say you're an Oracle certified professional, it means you have the skill set. You're a Google certified professional, Amazon Web Service professional, Azure, Microsoft Azure certified professional. So I'll encourage everyone, if you're in college, out of college, get certified. There's so many. In my book, I listed all the certifications and kind of gave some guidance on based on your skill sets and what you love to do, but just get certified.
Thank you. Deanna or Jessica, do you want to add anything about certifications in your experience?
I think especially when you're coming out of school without the industry experience, it's a very helpful way for you to benchmark with what the industry knows. So they might not, I went to a very small college. Most companies were not familiar with my curriculum, but they then could look at things that I had been certified in as well and understand, okay, we know what that network certification is, for example. So she must understand this and we can hire her or expect her to know that.
Okay, so real granular, if I wanted to get a certification, what website do I go to? What do I look up on the internet?
Well, let me Google it for you. Really, it's pretty easy. You can search for any of these things. You can search AWS certification and there'll be multiple different kinds. I know the Google one's a little bit better, but there's usually an intro or an associate kind of application developer type intro level. And then after that, you'll find more advanced ones in certain areas. And that's partially just because cloud technology is so broad. So then there'll be one in networking specific technology. There'll be one in databases, one in analytics and things like that, so that you can then, select certain areas that you're more interested in. From my point of view, I think the baseline ones that cover across all of the different types of technology is a good way to start. And then as you find areas that you're interested in, then diving in more there is probably a good approach.
So Jessica, you want to add anything?
Yeah, the one thing about certifications is there's a lot of people looking to take your money for certifications. And one of the ways for you to think about certifications and your education, frankly, is your time is money. And the investment you make in your certifications should give you a reward. How do you figure that out? If LinkedIn is a gold mine when you're trying to figure out careers. I recommend that you go to LinkedIn. It's a kind of a Facebook for job searching and looking at companies, and take a look at careers that you think you're interested in, or maybe you're starting out in, and look at jobs and people that are successful in the job that are doing things that you think you might want to do. Look at their certifications. And then also search jobs in LinkedIn, for example, that are looking for people. The job search engines actually key on your certifications. So you can follow the money and you can invest in yourself in a way that you know you're spending your money on the right things. When I wasn't making a lot of money, I took some very hard tests that were very expensive. They cost $500 to take. They take months to study for, and I'm not a good test taker. And so you have to be willing to pay twice sometimes for these tests. And so you really want to be committed to the goal and make sure that the bang is worth the buck. So
Yeah, could I just add to what Jessica
Absolutely.
said? If you take the exam the first time and you fail it, take it again.
I like that.
Yeah.
Another thing to note, once you get your first job, a lot of companies have professional development budgets. So, it's not a guarantee, but you might have $500 or $1,000 that you're allowed to spend on a training during the year. And this is the kind of thing that you could take to your manager and say, I would like to do this certification. Can I use my professional development money for this? Because Jessica's right, it's expensive.
the other thing I want to add is when I was making $7 an hour and I didn't have an education and I just needed a better job, I had kids to feed. LinkedIn does this too. You can do certifications that are like these little badges. They're not necessarily recognized by the industry, but if you can get an interview, you can say, look, I can't afford the certifications, but I wanted to prove that I can do these certifications. So these are examples. I know they're not, the expensive ones, but I want you to know that I'm capable of doing this.
That
Give
is
me
a
a chance.
good
That's
tip.
a good point. Yeah.
That's a great
Yep.
tip. I love that. LinkedIn Learning is
You're
another.
proving.
Yeah.
Yep, you're proving yourself. You've got to show some badges of proof, and you do it within your means, whatever they are.
Absolutely.
I love that.
Coursera also has some free courses that you can take, and they give you a Coursera certificate, but it's free. And just like Jessica said, you're showing that you have the skill sets. Yeah, that's a good point.
So we did that poll about how comfortable people feel on a scale of 1 to 10 with cloud computing, like how knowledgeable they are. And about 70% said only a 1, 2, or 3. And I'm saying that because I want you all to know that you're in the same boat here. Like nobody is an expert except the 3 women on the screen. Everybody, there's no question that's too silly. Like everybody is learning about this. The vast majority of you feel really new to this kind of content. People have been posting some awesome links, including EC. Thank you for that. So grab those links and make sure you save those. Let's move on to another question. Some of you alluded to this a little bit. Jessica, I'd like to start with you here. So the question, we got this a lot in our registration, which is how do you anticipate cloud computing changing over time? What trends have you noticed? What do you think is on the horizon? You mentioned like looking ahead, like what if we're looking ahead, what are we looking at?
Well, I thought this was an interesting question, and I don't have a crystal ball, so I don't know what lies ahead, but I think it's a pretty safe bet to say that, AI and quantum computing and some of these big buzzwords are the way of the future. The reason they're buzzwords, but they're the way of the future is the nut hasn't been cracked yet. I mean, AI, there's a lot of fear about, AI taking over jobs and things like that. Yes, AI has a lot of potential. It's not there yet, but people are thinking that way. So I do think that, a lot of people are excited about a lot of these new areas. And so the excitement, the momentum, and the possibilities usually lead to the innovation and the growth in that area. How cloud computing will change, I think things are going to be more accessible. I noticed that more layers keep getting added to make things easier for people. So, I mentioned I'm an infrastructure person. So, you start at the lower levels of ones and zeros and you plug things in, and then you put software on top of things to make things easier. And with cloud computing, there's a lot of layers on top of things. When you get out here to a presentation, you don't have to know all these things under the hood. You don't have to know how your car runs or how to change your oil. You just have to know how to use the things inside here. So being a scientist for AI requires a lot of education and a lot of work there, but they're starting to extrapolate those layers, and there's some software available now to where you can kind of do learning simply without having to be that supercomputer up here yourself. They're putting those layers in place so that it doesn't have to be that hard. So I think that's going to continue to happen. The challenge with that is that the more layers you put on things, the more things can go wrong. So something down here can fall out and cause problems up here. And so there's a lot of busy work and there's a lot of opportunity. So every time another layer occurs, there's all these specializations and all this work and stuff that has to happen to make it happen. So there's opportunity all over the place. It's really what are you interested in?
Thanks, Jessica. Issy, do you want to add your predictions for what's coming down the pike?
Yeah, I was reading a Forbes article, I think last week, and it says that we're just around 20% of cloud penetration. So it means that there's still a whole lot of work to do. A lot of enterprises, especially with COVID, what we've seen in the last 1 year, people don't want to be around 6 feet of each other. So that means that people do not want to be on premises. Like they don't want to be in a physical location working on servers and doing all of that, what we used to do in the past. People want to be apart. So being apart means you want to go to the cloud. So we've seen in the last 1 year, a lot of rush. We're doing quite a lot of migration. Public sector is moving to the cloud. Financial services, healthcare, agri, everybody's moving to the cloud. And so the cloud is here to stay. And I believe that just like Jessica mentioned about AI and all of this fancy stuff, will ride on top of cloud. So I'm doing my second master's in artificial intelligence. It's just because I think the idea of not, always wanting to learn. I just want to learn. I want to follow the trend. I want to follow the money. And that's, that's what I would say. So between AI, we're right on top of cloud, but there's still a lot of penetration to do within cloud.
I love that. And I love the second master's. We do get a question in the chat here about, do you need a master's degree? And Issy said no. And Deanna pointed out she doesn't have a master's degree. There's a lot of ways to grow in a field that is as new and vibrant as this.
Right.
So Deanna, what do you think is on the horizon?
It's a little bit different now that I'm not in cloud technology. I don't read all these articles all the time anymore, and I'm not trying to sell cloud to financial services customers. And so being on the other side and actually working at one of these companies, it's much more, I don't know, I feel like we're so much further behind that to me, like the biggest hurdle to get things to the cloud is always the security conversation. It's never an easy thing to say like, oh, is my data actually safe up there? Or where is it, right? Like what happens if it's deleted? Nobody wants to look at it logically and understand that your data is probably much, much safer in the cloud than it is in any on-prem data center that is rusting away in some facility that who knows has access to with their badge and whatnot. But it's more of a logical and an emotional argument. And I think the security technology that's out there today, to a certain degree, is difficult to understand for a lot of people. And so I think that will continue to evolve and become, I think, Jessica, to your point, like easier and easier over time. so that it doesn't even become a conversation that's happening that much anymore, and that people just default feel comfortable with moving stuff to the cloud. That's one where I think, like, and maybe not so much on the big time horizon of like, 10 years from now when everything's super cool and we have artificial intelligence and everything, but more of like 3 years from now and a little bit smaller. And then the other thing that we always get tripped up on is billing. The cloud is really complicated to understand with billing. The typical enterprise big company is very familiar with writing a big check to some kind of vendor for a ton of hardware that's going to be delivered, and then they'll set it up and they can physically see it and understand it and track it in accounting. It's very difficult for a company to understand that my costs are going to vary every month, that I can't predict them, and that I don't know what services we're going to use, or how each service has like 100 different SKUs attached to it for every region.
What's a SKU?
A SKU. I actually don't know what that stands for. SKU. It's going to be.
It's a number to identify the item.
Yeah. I was trying to think of the actual acronym there. So if you think of like, I won't think of a better example than that. It's essentially
Mr. Google will know.
all of the different ways that we get charged. And it's very hard to read those bills and understand exactly where our money went. And so that's kind of the second hurdle of being on the other side of a cloud relationship now, and trying to figure out so that we can become comfortable with moving more things to the cloud by anticipating what it might cost, and being able to define that.
I mean, I struggle sometimes to read my phone bill and understand why it has changed, right? And that's like a similar on a much smaller scale. Like I used more data, but like doing what and how and at what rates, doing different things. I want to do our second poll because it pertains to our last group of questions here. Alyssa, could you put our second poll? And if all of our attendees, we want to know how you prefer to learn new technologies. Do you study solo? Do you study in small groups? Do you like a classroom, or do you like to do online tutorials? So take a moment, and when you are ready, just answer that question. And the reason we're asking you this is because I'm going to ask our experts here what advice they have for college students and young professionals who want to learn these skills. Like, how do we do this? We talked about some certifications, but we've also received a question in the chat about what should high school students be studying? What should college students be studying? And then what else could folks do on the side? Jessica, maybe we can start with you on this one.
Sure. So how to build your skills in cloud computing. I would actually step back a little bit and start with building some critical thinking skills. Learning how to solve a problem and break it down is going to be a really good baseline for learning how to work with computers and get into cloud computing. When you're programming, regardless of what program it is, you're basically giving instructions to a computer, and depending on the complexity of what you need to program, you have to learn how to take something fuzzy and complicated and break it down into a series of steps and instructions. So
Jessica, can you move your mic?
Sorry.
There we go.
Sorry, I was drinking water. I moved my mic. So learning how to break things down into a series of steps and instructions. And the reason critical thinking is really important is because it's messy. It's always messy. You're always dealing with messy problems. You have a mess and you have to learn how to do something with the mess and turn it into something that's not messy anymore. So if you spend some time, and there's critical thinking courses and just some theory around how to break things and organize things. You're learning it in your biology class. You learn how to classify things for biology and put things into different slots. That's the same kind of concept of what you end up doing with computers and solving problems. When you want to get into programming, don't start really itty bitty. Like if you can give an instruction and it does something back, you have programmed. You don't need to program a robot to talk back to you. Start with, hello world. You can Google hello world. There is a lot of languages that you can learn hello world. You're basically giving the computer an instruction to talk back to you and say, hello world. And you can do this in lots of programming languages. And just doing that one simple thing in a lot of different mediums would give you a sense of accomplishment, but also kind of an understanding of it's really the same. It's just different tools to talk to the computer. And so your job is really learning how to talk to the computer so it knows how to receive your words.
Thank you, Jessica. I love that. Someone once explained to me that just like if you're learning a new language, like a spoken language, you start and you're just trying to be understood, right? You're trying to order a glass of soda in another country in another language. It doesn't have to be fancy. You're just trying to get yourself understood, and you get smoother and more dynamic as you go, but you got to start somewhere. And I think that's true when you're learning to talk to a computer as well. Deanna, what do you think? Advice for folks on what they should study, how they can prepare for this career?
Yeah, that's such a big question. Uh,
Break it down, choose a part. It's up to you.
Yeah, I do like I like Jessica what you said about a feeling of accomplishment. I think it's really important that you can find Coursera and Udacity and all these like online courses to really zero in on a certain area and figure out like, how do I code in Python? How do I code in Java? How do I code all these different languages? But taking a moment to actually like recognize that you did something and that you got the computer to talk back to you, or you hit a bug and figured it out eventually and got your program to work the way that you wanted to, I think is a really important part of it, because otherwise it can feel like you're not actually really achieving, you're not hitting the milestones or anything like that. And I think if you take a moment to say, I did, right? I programmed something and I can continue doing this, you'll want to. It's positive reinforcement within your own brain, which will only help you.
Thank you. PC, how about you?
I would say, go to Udemy, Coursera, LinkedIn, and just start with the basics. Search for Cloud Foundation, search for Cloud Computing 101, and start there. Learn. Take notes. So I still write, like I still have a book and a pen. I still write. I know we're in technology age, but yeah, I see that. Yeah, take
Oh, look
notes.
at all three of you are note takers.
Right.
That's
You
amazing.
just have to do it so that you can go back to it, and learn. Someone put in the chat that how do you struggle with self-paced learning?
Yeah.
I know that it can be a challenge, but for you to survive in tech, you have to be self-motivated. You have to, and I think the other speakers have spoken about self reinforcement or appreciation. So when you do a little bit, if you finish one chapter, you appreciate yourself. If you can form groups, 2 or 3 people come together, let's finish this course in 1 month, and just keep pushing yourself. Always remember to push yourself. If people come from situations where there was one computer for 150 people to share, and now I've taught over 1,000 girls how to code in the last 1 year. It was all that self-motivation and self-push. So push yourself, learn little bits, appreciate yourself, and keep on going.
Thank you. I think the accountability. Oh, go ahead, Jessica.
Oh, I was just going to add that, the other thing about, giving yourself positive rewards and learning how to push past goals is it translates everywhere in your life. A funny little story. I have a farm now, and I have some donkeys and a horse, and it's expensive to get their hooves done. And my daughter is the horse person, but now I'm taking care of them because she's in college. And I don't want to spend $200 a month to take care of hooves. I taught myself, I'm like, if I can teach myself how to do computers, I can figure out how to clip these hooves. My daughter was really upset. And then finally, I took enough courses on how to do it that I can do it as good as a farrier. So what I'm trying to say is, you learn this, girls, and you will learn this for the rest of your life, and everything you do, you will be unstoppable. It translates everywhere.
I love that so much. And I'm someone on this call who's not a software developer and I don't code, right? I work at Girls Who Code on our programs, but I use Excel all the time. And I had to learn how to write formulas in Excel, which is in its own way telling a computer that you want it to do some math for you, right?
Right.
And I had an issue the other day where I couldn't get my formula to work and I was about to throw my computer out the window. And I was Googling and I was Googling and I was reading examples. And my partner who lives with me is a software developer. And I was like, I'm not asking him. I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to do it myself. And I did figure it out. And it was the best feeling I had all day when it finally worked. Thank you very much.
It's the best.
It's the best.
Yeah. Then you want to tell your friends, like you ping people and you're like, hey,
Deanna, no joke. I texted my best friend. I solved my Excel problem.
you really great feeling. Yeah.
So we got the results of that poll, which is really fascinating. We're asking people how they like to learn. And 40% said online tutorials. And then another 27% said small groups. And I think this is a great opportunity, Isi, to your point, make an accountability group with your friends. Like pick a course that you're going to do. It can be free or it can be cheap, or you can ask around and try to get some fundraising for it. Pick a course you're going to do, 2 or 3 other people, and then make checkpoints. Every Monday night, we're going to send each other our progress, right? Like that's a way to help each other motivate. Jessica, did you have something you wanted? You're muted. Oh yeah.
Yeah, I did. So I learned this early because I taught computers. If you can teach something that you learned, you will remember it forever.
There you
So
go.
if you learn a little something, bore your family to death and your friends and teach them.
I love
And
it.
you will find that you will retain everything in life. And
so
it will be
good.
so valuable because you'll learn speaking skills, you'll learn how to organize your thoughts, and it'll build upon itself. So if it's overwhelming, find a way to teach it, even if it's just a little bit, and you'll
I love
find that
that.
you'll have more confidence.
That's such excellent advice. And then I should plug Girls Who Code College Loops here. So a college loop is a self-started group of women in college that you don't have to have been a Girls Who Code alumni. So if you didn't get to do one of our programs when you were younger, it's not too late. We're going to talk about that in a second. It's not too late. You find a couple of women at your college, you make a college loop, you go on our website to join us. It's free, it doesn't cost any money. And we offer you some resources, some ideas, some activities, tutorials. We have a like how to get started with open source coding activity with you and your friends can do together. So start a college loop. Oh, thank you. Alyssa posted it in the chat. That's awesome. That's a great way to build. And you can do whatever you want. If you don't want to do our activities and you want to do the AWS certification, that's awesome too. I love our student who said, I always talk to my dog. Talking to stuff out loud is so real. All right, we're going to do one final question here. I want to thank everyone in the audience who shared questions. These have been so awesome. The last one we have, this came from you all when you registered, is just stepping back more broadly. A lot of folks are applying to internships right now, first jobs. How would you recommend preparing for these applications? And one of the questions we got a lot is if you get asked something like, are you familiar with XYZ technology? Or have you ever done this before? And the answer is no. How do you respond to a question like that? Deanna, you want to start us off?
Yeah, I used to interview a lot for my team, so I feel like I've seen every which way of this, and hopefully have a good understanding of what companies might be looking for. So I think the first part is that you should always be honest, right? The first red flag in an interview is if someone falsely claims that they know something, because that then gives me the sign that I can ask you more questions on it, right? You're just all of a sudden digging a hole, and that's not a position you want to be in.
To use that language analogy, imagine someone says, do you speak Spanish? And you say yes, and then they ask you something in Spanish. Like you're gonna get yourself in trouble.
Exactly. And then you're off on kind of a wrong relationship with your interviewer. They're not then really trusting of your answers after that. So instead, I think it's much better to be straightforward. So to your point, Emily, of what happens when they ask you, do you know XYZ technology? And you say no, where does the conversation go then? So I think the next part to fall on is if you know something similar. So you could say, no, I don't know that, but I do know about this. Or in the event where you can't draw that parallel, you could ask them to help you understand it better so that you might be able to provide more information on something that you do know. So interviewers are not trying to stump you. or kick you out or anything like that. They're looking for people to join their company. That's why they're interviewing you, right? So they will try and help you through that. They just need to know that you need some help, right? So they won't be able to give you the cues of what that technology is if you don't ask. So I think, just kind of breaking down that it isn't this like end all be all scary thing. I remember going to interviews in college and being like just so sweaty the whole time, and it was terrible. And it doesn't have to be that way, right? It could be a much more kind of engaging conversation between two people that are really trying to do something to help each other, right? You're looking for a job and they're looking for someone to join their team.
Love that. EC, what's your advice?
Yeah, I think when you see all those buzzwords, or they ask you all those buzzwords now in tech, someone say CI/CD pipeline or Jenkins, they want to throw all those buzzwords at you. You say, no, I honestly, I don't know it, but I can learn it, and then you quickly change the subject to how you faced a challenge that you didn't know anything about, but you researched it, you Googled it, you called a friend. And so I think recruiters just want to see that desire and ability to learn and keep learning and solving the problem. So I mean, I was coming from another country to the US, and I probably failed 7 interviews before I got into Accenture. And so it took me a while to learn what the American recruiter was looking for. And it's really just that honesty, So I'll say, no, I don't know this, but I can learn it. If you give me some time, I can learn it. The other day, I had this problem. I didn't know it, but this is how I solved it.
That's such good advice. And I would just like to, not to put a pin on this, but did you hear her say that she had 7 interviews that didn't go well before she got the job? And this is a very impressive woman you've been hearing from. So that's just a reminder that everybody doesn't get every job all the time. It's okay. It takes some time, no matter how many credentials you have or how good you're feeling. So thank you for sharing that. That's a vulnerable thing to share, and we appreciate it.
I was actually just going to jump in there really quick. I do think like job fairs and career fairs are a great way to practice interviewing, because it is the skill that needs to be practiced.
Right.
Very true.
Yeah.
And Jessica, let's close out with your thoughts.
So interviewing is really tough. I tend to get nervous, and I stumble over my words, and I can't remember acronyms to save my life. I had a database interview and I couldn't describe a cluster, and I'm walking out of the interview going, I cannot believe I couldn't answer the most fundamental thing in the interview. I just couldn't answer it. I'm like, so try not to work yourself into a nervous bundle is first and foremost. So find the things that you can do to relax yourself so that you're able to answer the questions. If you need a tool, I need a tool. I have a tool right now. This is just a necklace that broke, and I sit here and mess with it because it allows me to think without getting nervous looking at my picture and analyzing things. So I love it. Find things that you need to make yourself comfortable, because people want to be comfortable with you. And if you're too nervous, they start interpreting that. So give yourself a chance to kind of work through the bundle of nerves. And then I do the same thing Izzy does. I don't know, but this is how I solve things I don't know. And I will tell you that it's changed over the years, but as a female, they expected me not to know anything. And I can't tell you how many times in my career it has been, you always surprise me. Like I really didn't expect that out of you, so people don't expect what they get out of me. I'm always underestimated, and it's my superpower. So I don't worry about it too much. I let people underestimate me, and I don't try to be a champion of words, and I'm just not super nimble with words. A lot of people are. That's not my superpower, but I'm a really good troubleshooter and I'm a good researcher. And so I know that, and I find the places where I fit. And I've not gotten more jobs than I've gotten. And I've had jobs that I haven't liked, and I've moved on. And so you have to do that in your career. You have to decide, this is who I am and this is how I move through the world. and you learn from every experience, and then you find the next opportunity, and you just find your place, and you can do it.
Thank you, Jessica. That is such a great note to end on. I also want to say Ashley in the comments, who has her first interview tomorrow for an internship and is a little nervous, you are going to crush it. Take a few deep breaths, find something to fidget with, and be honest with them. We're going to put up on the screen a survey for all of you attendees. All you have to do is take out your phone and hold it up to the QR code with your camera, and that's how you'll fill out a little survey for us. This is really helpful, this feedback you give us, but I want to just say a huge shout out here to our panelists, to Jessica, Deanna, and EC. This has been a wonderful conversation for me. I can tell in the chat that folks have been feeling really inspired as well. And again, with the advice I started out with, if you feel inspired by any of these women, I would go find them on LinkedIn. I would send them a nice note about what inspired you and what advice you appreciated, because you never know when you're going to be wanting an internship, and it's going to be really nice to email Jessica Pruitt or Dr. EC. Like, this is the time to make those connections. So we are done with our program for the evening. Panelists, thank you for your time. I hope everyone enjoys their dinner. I hope everyone enjoys their Fridays and hopefully a long weekend, maybe for some of us, knock on wood. But it has been a real delight to have you all here. Oh, thank you, Alyssa. Up on your screen. Next up, actually, it's from Deloitte, Jessica. We have an event next Tuesday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time about building a successful career path. And this is with Deloitte and Toyota. So if you like these kinds of conversations, you want to learn more, please come Tuesday, 4 p.m. Thank you all so much. You're amazing. And we will see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.